Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host Brian West, here to give you your top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it throughout the week. These top 8 stories are only documented for records and to highlight topics for those in the business of talk radio, talk media, and those who just want to stay informed. Now let's get to the top 8 stories that made it into The Mediator this week. Story number 1, ladies and gents. Do all teachers and students get a fair and equal opportunity? Question. You may notice something different about each class of society when you take a visit to the schools in the United States of America. If you go to a public school in the inner city, you may notice metal detectors and students wearing uniforms with clear backpacks. You may also notice something different about the teachers. Now, when you go to a school in a higher class neighborhood where there's money flowing through and there's a good economic structure, you may see things differently. That means you may not see metal detectors and you may not see uniforms and you may not see children in see-through backpacks. You may also notice some ethnic differences in the United States as well, depending on the community. That means you may notice at inner city schools there's a diverse group of people. And in other neighborhoods, you may not see that depending on where you are. So is this a problem? These simple facts in America may cause the learning experience to be different in each environment. This curve may make some teachers not want to work in some schools. Because of these differences, some teachers and students refuse to go to certain schools, and teachers are also paid differently depending on the state that they are teaching in. It's clear that in this developing story, some people are not being given a fair shake. So does this have anything to do with the American education system and why teachers are striking and why some students are not being educated properly? This story may stay in the news because teachers are starting to bring their experiences to the media and to the forefront. And if you toured some schools in your district, once again, the growing question of gentrification lingers in the balance. Now, this may be a reason why education reform may soon be a top headline. Story number 2, the problem with voting in the melting pot and democracy. Those are two things. There's a melting pot and there's a democracy. In the United States, there are many different types of people and cultures, if you haven't noticed. I'm sure those who have been here a while can take notice of that. This means that there are many different types of people at the polls voting, and that may be a voting problem for some because some things and some issues are out of some voters' league, but those votes still count, especially in local elections. Because of this, some taxpayers and the authorities writing the rule books may be at odds. That means they may be trying to change things around to prevent some voters from voting on things that they are not participating in. The problem seems to be in allowing voters to vote on tax levies or issues that don't affect them. That's the problem. Voting is not the problem, but voting on issues that do not affect you or you don't know anything about may be a problem. So that's why the voting topic may stay in the news. The voting topic came center stage when analysts studied the way some candidates have been obtaining votes. Some taxpayers don't want people voting on tax levies, like I said, that they don't pay, and other things that go on in the community. But does all this come together? Like I said, this is the melting pot, and this is a democracy, a representative democracy that many people engage in. But some people are starting to see some loopholes or some problems in the voting procedure, especially when it comes to candidates tallying up the votes. These differences in the U.S. voting process may bump this story up even higher if it stays in the news, especially around election season. Story number 3, changing the way we think about incarceration. It means prison. In criminology and in the field of understanding the criminal mind, we can't help but keep our attention on those who break the law. The issue of prison and incarceration levels bumped this story up to number 3 when a prison fight broke out between inmates and guards. There was life lost in the brawl, if you haven't heard the story. There are other cases where prison brawls have broken out as well. And I guess onlookers, people who analyze the prison system, are blaming the prison problems on unqualified workers, while some are just blaming the justice system in general. The incarceration problem probably will stay in the news because people who have been involved in the prison system and many people who are affected by the prison system are very highly involved in knowing their rights. Due to the nature of the story, it may stay in the headlines if it continues to catch the media's attention or if something continues to go wrong. When it comes to maintaining the justice system and the public, there is a huge gap in maintaining cooperation. Story number 4. Are we reaching the climax with North Korea, or is this just the beginning of a long relationship? A cry for help can't explain why a nation would use nuclear threats to get the attention of the world and have the President of the United States standing center stage taking credit, or taking some of the credit. There are a few things to take notice of when understanding what is taking place in the global arena. Note that North Korea has been working on its missile defense system since 1976. That's a long time. There were even claims by the Japanese in 2016 that North Korea put a satellite into orbit. And I guess after the launch, North Korea claimed it was using it for scientific purposes, peaceful purposes. In 2017, the country successfully tested a thermonuclear bomb, also known as a hydrogen bomb, causing a magnitude 6.3 earthquake in the region. In the midst of all of this conflict, photos then surfaced of Chinese ships supplying North Korea while they were feuding with the United States over shooting missiles. Now take note that the country is supposed to be poor, but has somehow been able to build and test nuclear weapons. While all of this surfaced, we watched a number of Republican officials in the Trump administration, including someone who played a key role in negotiations, Rex Tillerson. When the story surfaced of Kim Jong-nam, the brother of Kim Jong-un, being assassinated, when it made news, everyone turned to North Korea as being the enemy. And now everyone is all of a sudden at the table talking about what's next for a small country that may be playing a mysterious role in something else. Expect this story to gain some steam in the upcoming weeks because there may be some things that will be revealed once this story reaches its full potential and once the climax starts to resolve to an ending. Story number 5. How to slow down border issues. The United States is not the only country that has border issues. In fact, every country that shares a border with another country has them. So that means we're not alone when it comes to the border. Although humanitarians see such cases that involve overwhelming volunteer hours and contributions from other people, what's being left out is the real reason why people flow to other countries' borders to try to cross. And that reason is war and conflict within their own country and an unstable government. Until these threats and the threat of war go away, there will always be and will continue to be people fleeing to the borders of other countries, especially safe haven countries. I do not expect this story to fade away as long as there is conflict and something in it for other people. But freedom is what people are willing to die for, and stability. And if they don't have it in their own countries, then they will try to find it in other countries where they can find resources to not only feed their families, but have a normal and stable lifestyle. Story number 6. Why freedom of religion is always under attack. To be honest, most social issues have already been solved because of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, but there may still be some moral concerns. Not just with the Constitution, but with the First Amendment. And some may ask why. After a person received backlash for posting a picture of some students praying at the prom, the list of violations to religious freedom shot this story up to number 6. There is a reality in the United States, and it has a lot to do with what or whom you choose to worship. The real problem may be peer pressure, or when people invade other people's moral compass or religious space. That means when people try to force you to do things you don't usually do. The key word is force. The good thing is that you have a choice, and under the First Amendment, you are not only free to choose your religion, but you are free to worship how you want to worship. The only reason why stories like these make headlines and top stories in the news is because others will always feel obligated to protect their religious beliefs when dealing with other religions and other people. If you battle with this in the United States, I recommend you reference your First Amendment rights. That is one of the only reasons why this story will stay in the news. Story number 7, and the final 2 stories that made it into the media this week: gender wars and sexual assault cases, all surfacing in the United States. While gender wars and sexual assault cases continue to make headlines, the notice and the attention bumped this story up to number 7 because of its magnitude and its potential to put a lot of people on the radar. That means everybody. The Cosby case and the Donald Trump saga is only half the reason why stories like these will remain in the news, because you're dealing with some big-time prominent figures. The real reality is that everybody in each gender category, male and female, etc., has been somehow affected by this story, and they may be using this time to add fuel to the fire of sexual assault, rape, and other sexual things that come with the raging bull of weeping victims. Some people are just staying out of the conversation and saying that 2 wrongs don't make a right, but keep an eye on this developing story, because even MVPs may get caught in this web. That means there are a lot of people who are involved in some high-level sexual activity and some gender wars. Story number 8, and the final story that made it into the media this week: are some people forgetting about local elections? Question. National elections are important, but most of the time local citizens stay at home. They stay out of the battle. These elections not only affect everyone in your local community, but they can really affect the future of the community as well. As election season approaches, many citizens are not happy with their local leaders. This story soared up to number 8 due to a low voter turnout in many local elections, and there is data that proves and shows that there are a lot of local citizens who do not participate in local elections. Well, I want to thank you so much for tuning to the media this week with me, Brian West, and please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to show us some support, go to our website and buy something, click on something, watch something, or read something, or you can just sponsor a program. Well, I want to thank you so much for tuning to the Mediator this week with me, the Doctor of Mediation, Brian West. Have a good week, everybody.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.